A special good evening and welcome to the Desk on Global Television, reaching you live and direct from the nation's capital, Abuja, Nigeria. My name is Ramsey Enoch. So many things happening, and of course, we need to bring you to speed with these happenings around Nigeria. Today, we want to look at something in fact, an area that is of interest to a lot of Nigerians because it has to do with law and order. It has to do with the constitution. It has to do with the judicial system. You know, oftentimes, a lot of people will tell you the judiciary is the last hope of the common man, which is what is the belief of Nigerians. But then, what are the challenges of the judicial system? Does the judiciary have challenges? You know, sometimes a lot of people don't even think about the fact that even the judiciary could also have challenges, as a matter of fact. Remember, we have three arms of the government: the executive, the legislature, and of course the judiciary, which is the third arm of the government. And they are responsible for the interpretation of the law. They are the ones, of course, that know what the law is all about. They are the ones that sit down to adjudicate on matters. As a matter of fact, today we want to look at the judicial system of Nigeria, the Nigerian judicial system, how it is going. What about the autonomy of the judicial system? How autonomous is the judicial system? Are we having interference? Who is interfering? And why are those people interfering? The interference, is it really having impact? What kind of impact is it having? Is it negative or positive impact? Because we need to look at the both sides of the coin. If these impacts are positive, then good and fine. But if they are negative, then it needs to look into in totality. These are the things we'll be talking about today. That's autonomy. Then apart from autonomy, we'll also look at some other areas that has to do with the court rulings. You know, a lot of times you'll hear a lot of Nigerians expressing dissatisfaction concerning court rulings when rulings come from the court. But sometimes it doesn't matter whether you accept the rulings of the court. The moment the judge has pronounced the ruling, if the ruling is already been announced, there is nothing actually, well, you can appeal, but then at that moment, there is nothing you can do about that except you go for an appeal, which has happened severally in the political system. In fact, political cases in court, majority of them have had what we call appeals, including the latest one that we have. That's the election petition tribunal, the panel that was set up to look into the electoral cases in Edo State. Well, the People's Democratic Party were not satisfied and they had to go for appeal. The same thing is applicable to Nigerians who are not satisfied with court rulings. They also have the right to appeal, okay? It's not just the government that appeal cases. If you are not satisfied with what the court has done, you can appeal to the next court until you get to the appellate court, until you get to the Supreme Court. All right? Your appeal court to the Supreme Court, wherever you want to take the case to, until the final judgment is being passed. It is only when it is passed by the apex court that you have virtually nothing more to do. But then we will have an expert join us, a legal practitioner join us on the desk this evening as we look at these issues. These are issues that have eaten deeply into the fabric of the society. In fact, Nigeria as a country and Nigeria as a nation have a lot of people asking questions. What are the questions asking? The questions being asked are, does the judiciary have autonomy? Is the judiciary becoming something different than what we used to have? then people also look at court rulings. How does these rulings happen? Because some people believe in the school of thought. Some Nigerians feel, well, if it doesn't go that way, they feel, well, this case was being influenced. But then we'll have I'm not an authority in that aspect. I'm not a legal practitioner, but a barrister will be with us on the program to really tell us if it is actually possible for court rulings to be influenced. All right. Yeah, when you talk about the autonomy and you talk about the court rulings, then you go to talk about the implementation. It is one thing for a court order to be passed. It is another thing for the enforcement, all right? The enforcement of these court rulings is another very important thing, because sometimes people say, well, we're looking for justice. Already there is a ruling from the court. But then what about the implementation? Who is shouldered with the responsibility of ensuring that court rulings are actually being enforced? I was speaking with a legal practitioner on Global Morning today, and he was making some very, very serious revelations. And he was talking about the fact that the Attorney General of the Federation has the right to sign and not to sign some rulings for it to be enforced, as the case may be. And what really led us to that is the local government autonomy, where the federal government had to take the state governors to court because they refused the local government autonomy. And after the court judgment, it took a very long time, even though right now Serap is saying questions have been asked to find out whether or not the court ruling is actually being enforced or being implemented at the local government level. If the funds is directly being disbursed from the central bank, okay, to the local government areas, 774 local government areas that we have in this country. There are some local governments that have some clauses, all right? What are the clauses? They don't have democratically elected local government chairman, which is part of one of the instructions that except a local government council have a duly democratically elected chairman, they can't get the funding from the federal government account to those local governments. And he talked about, for instance, Rivers State right now, with what is happening with the state of emergency. We all know what is happening right there. Okay, do we have, all right, this funding going to states like River State? And he also talked about Ondo State, where there are some issues, and other states where there are issues with the appointment, the election. Let me use the word election, because this local government chairman needs to be elected into office. And the reason why that instruction came, all right, is because some of these governors were using caretaker chairman to get funds that were not accounted for, which was part of the reason why it was being judged by the court. The ruling came from the court that this local government should have their autonomy. I'm going somewhere. I'm trying to talk about enforcement and implementation of the ruling that has come from the court. After the ruling came from the court order, everything came. The implementation became something very serious, and it never happened. And Nigerians started asking questions. Come on, this is a judgment that came from the court. How comes we are not getting the enforcement? Why is it not being enforced? It's part of the reason why we want to know whether or not the judiciary is autonomous. And we also want to know if court rulings can actually be influenced, and whether or not it's been influenced if this ruling has come. What about the enforcement? Who makes sure? Who are those that ensure the enforcement of these court rulings? I'm not talking about maybe, for instance, I know in courts, I think there is an enforcement team in court where they come to you and tell you, well, you've not paid for your rent, and as such, the case is in court. You need to move your things out. If you don't move out for this period of time, they will move you out, and the enforcement unit ensure that that is being done. Then maybe if you don't pay your revenue or your tax, for instance, as a business owner, they can come lock up your shop or your store. These are enforcement. Or maybe in the enforcement team, we also have law enforcement agents who move about with them, like the police, the civil defense, and all of that, to make sure there is an enforcement. But enforcement for cases like the local government autonomy, I'm just giving an instance, who ensure the enforcement of that? Because what can you do? Can you question the CBN to say, why have you not disbursed? Or is it because there was, at a point, there was a statement that came that the account, the audited account of the local government, I think 3 months or so, or 3 years or thereabout, I can't fix it right now, needs to be submitted to the Central Bank of Nigeria before the disbursement. There was a time that that clause came in. But now, like today, Serap was asking questions. What are you disbursing to the local government areas in Nigeria? There's 774 local government councils in Nigeria. Have you started disbursing? Whatever you are disbursing, make it known to Nigerians. That's what Sarah did this morning. And that is for transparency's sake, all right, because the court order has come, the judgment has been passed and all of that. But what about the enforcement, which is very crucial as a matter of fact? All right, it is the desk, and we are looking at a topical issue. I'm not trying to tell you that not complying with court order is something that you should do. It is not good, it's the law. All right, it's against the law of Nigeria for you not to comply with court rulings. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people don't know, but I just need to let you know right now on the desk that it is a fundamental violation of the law for you not to comply with court orders. Failure to implement court orders is a fundamental violation of the rule of law. So this is something that everyone has to do. All right. Like I said, a legal practitioner and a public affairs analyst is going to be joining me on the desk this evening as we look at this issue. It's a bordering issue. It's something that people should be worried about, because we've had cases. A lot of people, there is this slogan right now, go to court. After sometimes, when that slogan started, there are some persons that they feel they can't get justice. Some Nigerians feel they can't get justice, all right, from the court of law, because they feel you need to have money, you need to be buoyant before you have justice from the court. But in case you don't know, there are pro bonos. We'll talk about all of that with my guest. Let's go on a quick break. After this break, we'll return, and the desk will continue in earnest as we look at the judicial system in Nigeria. And we're looking at autonomy. How autonomous is the judiciary? Then we'll also look at court rulings and enforcement. Let's go on a quick break. We will return, and the desk will continue.
Do you know that global television can be watched in Nigeria and all over the world?
Download the Global TV Nigerian mobile app for Android and iOS devices to watch global television real-time from around the world. What are you waiting for?
Start downloading and stay connected to global television.
Do you know that global television can be watched in Nigeria and all over the world?
Download the Global TV Nigerian mobile app for Android and iOS devices to watch global television real-time from around the world. What are you waiting for?
Start downloading and stay connected to global television.
Do you know that global television can be watched in Nigeria and all over the world?
Download the Global TV Nigerian mobile app for Android and iOS devices to watch global television real-time from around the world. What are you waiting for?
Start downloading and stay connected to global television.
Do you know that global television can be watched in Nigeria and all over the world?
Download the Global TV Nigerian mobile app for Android and iOS devices to watch global television real-time from around the world. What are you waiting for?
Start downloading and stay connected to global television.
Welcome back. It is still the desk right here on Global Television, where we're looking at the judicial system And of course, we're looking at the autonomy of the judiciary. We're looking at court rulings and, of course, the enforcement, how it has been happening. And according to some statements coming from the Nigerian the network on Police Reform Network, as a matter of fact, in Nigeria, have said, well, if a court order is not enforced, all right, it results to so many things. What are the things that it results to? It results to litigation. It results to so many other things. Like I was saying, the network on police reform in Nigeria, that is NOPRIN, has said that non-compliance with court orders can lead to mob justice, civil unrest. It can also increase something like litigation against the police and violence against police officers because they feel, well, what needs to be done is not done, and that is non-compliance with court order can lead to violence against the police because sometimes they can go to do the enforcement. This was part of the findings, and as a matter of fact, which was contained in a comprehensive research report that was titled Non-Compliance with Court Order by Officers of the Nigerian Police Force, Implication for the Criminal Justice System. And as a matter of fact, we are going to be looking at it critically. But then my guest will be joining me right away as we talk about that. And before then, I want you to know one or two things about the fact that it is important for us to know that the justice system in Nigeria is something very important. Let's go on a quick break. After this break, I'll return and I will introduce my guest to you, and I will look at the judiciary right away. Stay with us. Welcome back from that break. My guest is right in the studio here, and he's in the person of Barrister Victor Giwa, a legal practitioner and a public affairs analyst. It's good to have you join us on the desk this evening.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We're talking about the judicial system in Nigeria, and we're looking at the autonomy, okay, court rulings, and of course, enforcement. But let's get started from here right now, from the autonomy. How do you think the judiciary can maintain its independence, okay, and autonomy in the face of political pressure and influence?
Well, thank you very much. This question actually goes to the root of the justice system in Nigeria and even everywhere in the world. Talking about judicial autonomy, independence, especially from within our own clime, political influences and interventions. Now, judicial autonomy is very key for us to have judicial autonomy. Judicial autonomy is very key for us to have a good justice system. And for you to avoid political interference in our justice delivery, then there's a need for us to have judicial autonomy. And so judicial autonomy, we are saying that where the judiciary, as the third arm of government, is so independent in terms of its finance, in terms of its administration, and in terms of its execution. So the judiciary should be able to fund itself, recruit its own staff, develop themselves, and execute judgments that are shunned out from this arm of government. And so in Nigeria, we don't have that independence. In Nigeria, we don't have that autonomy. And that is why, if you look at the judgment of the Supreme Court, talking about the autonomy for the local government, the intention is that there must be every arm of, that is a tier of government, but every arm of government under the rule of separation of power should be independent. The judiciary should be independent of the executive. The executive should be independent of the legislature. Of course, there's a place where there will be a kind of an overlapping in terms of their function. But in respect to the judiciary, we are campaigning and canvassing that our judiciary should be so independent, because if judiciary is dependent on the executive, it means that the decision of judiciary, the justice system, or the justice that will be delivered by the judiciary will be tainted with some executive influences, will be tainted with some executive colors, will be tainted, will be defiled. Let me use that word. The justice system that we're going to have from the judiciary will be a defiled justice. So and everybody is canvassing that we have a situation where the judiciary have their own finance. They present their budget to the National Assembly. Their budget is approved at when due. They are given the independence to administer their funds. They don't go cap in hand to the executive to ask for money. And that has been the situation in the past and even till now. We have a situation where some years ago, about 3-4 years ago, during our MBA conference, a chief judge of a state, in short, the chief judge of my state, I'm not going to say what my state is for the purpose of, but the chief judge of my state told us in the MBA conference that, look, you people are telling us judicial, you are talking about judicial independence, but we always go to our governors to get money to buy vehicles. We always go to our governors to get money to buy some furnitures, to cover some expenses that are not covered by our budget, that even when we submit such budget, they will tell us that there's lack of fund. And because the fund comes from the executive, that they determine how much they can give. That when the judicial arm of government in the state gives its budget to the State House of Assembly, of course, it is the governor of the state that presents the overall budget of the state. It is the governor that will tell you, no, we don't have this amount of money, based on the allocation that comes from federal government and the internal generated revenue. They will tell you, no, you want 100 million to to buy, to refurbish our offices, to buy certain office equipment for our judges, to improve our the structure in the courts, to make the court conducive. But, Madam Chief Judge, we don't have this amount of money for this year. Where the amount you have to buy of cars, we are going to suspend that. And by so doing, the executive will now be detecting the kind of justice we'll be getting. Because when there's a case between an individual and the government, or some agencies and the government, the tendency that a particular judge will want to ponder towards the state governor or government who provides the fund, who funds that judicial arm of that state, who buys their furniture, who provided them with cars, who pays for their aids and all other things, who gives them all kinds of allowances. That kind of judgment or justice will be tainted. And so the first and fundamental thing for you to get a perfect, not, I don't want to use the word perfect, for you to have justice in our justice delivery system is for us to have complete judicial autonomy, especially when it concerns finance.
All right. Let's talk about the appointment of judicial officials now. Does the appointment of judicial officials have anything to do with the autonomy of the judiciary?
It does. You could see we have a situation again in Imo State. We have something similar in Benue State. Now, if you look at the Constitution, the appointment of the Chief Judge is the Chief Justice of the Federation is based on the recommendation of the NJC, approved by the President, supported by 2/3 of the National Assembly. So it means that if the Judicial Service Commission brings in, as a matter of fact, the Constitution used the word recommend. I have felt, and I strongly believe, that it shouldn't be the NJC should recommend. No. The NJC should appoint the most senior judicial officer of the Supreme Court, Justice of the Supreme Court, to be the Chief Justice of the Federation. And his name should be submitted to the National Assembly for screening. And the screening should be screening as to his or her credentials, profile, and not to determine whether or not the person is the person that should occupy that office. Of course, the truth is the matter is that person has always been in the Supreme Court. So there will be no need for you to start talking about the background of that person. So you now see that the person must now be appointed by the President. So if the President does not like you, and we saw what happened in the case of the Chief Justice of the Federation, Chief Justice of Nigeria before now, where the then President Buhari was delaying before he appointed, and what happened to Onoge, the former Chief Justice of the Federation, Honorable Justice Onoge, JCN. And I could remember that time when, if you remember the case of when he was being tried by the federal government, we were all on the street. I was organizing protests against his removal when at that time there was allegation against it. So the point we are making is that it is still subject. But when the executive contests for election, until anybody goes to court, the judiciary does not approve of their elections. So you conduct an election, you win, they won't declare you winner, you go in there, even if the first court or first instance declare that you did not win the election, you will still be in that position. Sure, they made it such a way that it has to go to for that of the governorship, it has to go to the Court of Appeal. At a point, it has to go to the Supreme Court. At a point, some of them have even expended their tenure, their term, their 4 years term before the Supreme Court will give judgment. If you don't need the judiciary to approve your election, then you shouldn't need the executive to approve the appointment of a judicial officer. That is my point.
All right. As it is right now, Is there anything, we're still talking about the autonomy yet, we've not talked about court rulings, though you've made an instance where this appointment and of course the sponsorship of the judiciary somehow affects the judgment from some courts. Now, is there anything that the judiciary can do to redeem this situation?
No. There's nothing they can do than there's nothing that can be done except a constitutional amendment.
Except a constitutional amendment?
Yes. And, well, to some extent, if anybody takes that particular section to the court, but majorly, principally, it is to be based on a constitutional amendment.
Based on a constitutional amendment?
Because the constitution needs to be amended to reflect that the appointment of a Chief Justice of the Federation or a Chief Judge of a state should be by the NJC. Should be by because if you look at what it reads, it is recommended by the National Judicial Commission and supported by 2/3 of the members of the House of Assembly for that of a state, and for the for that of the Chief Justice of the Federation of that of the National Assembly, approved by the President.
So it must be approved by the executive.
Yes, it has to be put by. That is the position of the Chief Justice of Nigeria, and some justices of the Supreme Court, and the Chief Judge of FCT. So there need to be a constitutional amendment to say that no, the NJC should appoint its officers to the position of Chief Justice after the person would have been screened by the National Assembly. The executive should not have any input into the appointment of judges.
Oh, all right.
Just like we said, the judiciary does not have any input. As a matter of fact, the judiciary has no form of input to the election of the executive. The only thing they do is that when the dispute arises as a result of the election, they interpret according to the law what the situation is. They don't add or remove. Do you understand? They must act within the people that presented themselves before them. Unlike the executive. The executive can choose to say, no, I'm not going to appoint, I don't approve you. I want to approve we have seen cases where, for example, in Imo State, the governor of Imo State did not take the most senior judge, appointed the third within the line. So he left the most senior, he left the next to the most senior, and appointed about the third, if I'm not mistaken.
And nothing can be done about it.
Of course, the NJC is quarreling with that.
All right, our time is fast spent right now. Let's talk about court rulings and enforcement. Sometimes there are court rulings that enforcement becomes an issue. Why do we have that? Is it because the judicial system is not respected enough?
No, the judicial system in Nigeria has not been respected. It's the most disrespected arm of government. We have the executive, legislature, and the judiciary. Nobody respects the government. The executive believes, does what they feel, because they own the coercive power. When I mean the coercive power, they own the forces, the Nigerian Police Force, the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Navy, the Nigerian Air Force, the Department of State Security Service, and those are persons who carry out, who have force power of coercion. So the judiciary doesn't have its own police. So the police belong to the executive. So the executive will tell you, okay, give your order. We'll be watching, we'll be looking at you. And until an order has the potency of being executed, it cannot be an order. It just becomes, it serves like a poem. An order of court that cannot be executed is as good as a poem. It rhymes. Our nursery rhymes.
Wow.
Yes, so until that order can be executed, and the only person that can enforce that is because when we get order, we write to the enforcement unit. Even the enforcement unit, we tell you that, oh, Commissioner of Police, bring up police. Police, they are under the executive, so we go back to the executive again. And so, I mean, we cannot have that, that connection. We cannot have that apron string. That is why we have problem with enforcement. And that is why you can see even government disobey court's order. There was a lawyer who did who did numbers of court orders that has been disobeyed by previous government, President Buhari, and he named over 200 court orders that were flaunted by the former president, federal government, president of the federation during the last administration. And I think we have not heard so much from this government, but it has always been like that. Government will disobey court orders. Government agency will disobey court orders. State government will disobey court order. Because you need also the executive to execute an order of the judiciary against the executive. I mean, that is the dilemma we are. And that is why, because court order is what makes court a court. If there is no court order, the court becomes a cinema. It is because that there is a court order. That's why everybody rushes to the court to say, let me get justice. Because justice is an order. Oh, this is the right person. This is the right thing. This thing you did is wrong. And so you should be punished for this. This is what is the right thing to do. You cannot go this way. This is the punishment for what you have done. If that order cannot be enforced, then it's as good as going to watch a movie.
So as it is right now, our time is already up, but then looking at the situation, if it is like this with the government, then how would it be with the average Nigerians? Because they said the judiciary is the last hope of the common man.
I remember the Attorney General of the Federation, this current Attorney General, saying in one of his comments, public comments, he said that it doesn't seem as if judiciary is not the last hope of the common man. That is not the hope of the elite. Because it seems that for your judgment to even be obeyed, you need to know somebody that will help you execute the judgment. So if the government or certain persons are not in tune with you, they are not friendly with you, they are not your friends, such judgments are disparaged. So it's very painful. But I think the judiciary, they are making efforts to see how they can salvage the situation. And I think also the government of the federation should also look at it. And I also think that from the Attorney General point of view, he too is not satisfied with this particular state of affairs. And maybe he will advise the federal government. Because whether you like it or not, whether you are the executive, you will one day need this government, this court order. You will one day need the judgment. The federal government went to court in the case of the federation and the other governors of the states, talking about conduct of local government elections. Sure. So the Attorney General that went to, he didn't go to the marketplace. He didn't go to the army headquarters. He didn't go to the naval headquarters. He didn't go to the police headquarters. They went to court. So that government that went to court should be ready to obey orders that come out of that court. And that is what we are promoting. And that is how it should be. And government should endeavor to obey court order and conduct its activities according to rule of law.
All right, thank you very much, Barrister Victor Giwa, for joining us on the desk this evening.
I'm very sorry for coming late.
Well,
very sorry.
there's no issue. I wish we could have more time, but I hope to have you on the desk some other time again.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
this is what it is. As a matter of fact, you've heard from a legal practitioner, but then the so-called is the fact that something needs to be done and something will be done about it because the situation and the state of affairs with the judicial system in Nigeria is being looked into. And even the judicial officials are not satisfied with the situation. They are not just sitting back folding their arms like he has said. All right, this is going to be the size of the desk. Today, the desk will come on your way again where we'll talk about other topical issues. Once again, many thanks for staying with us on the desk tonight. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Have a beautiful day ahead of you. Bye-bye for now.